Leah Portwood's prom milestone, growing up in the spotlight, and finding her own identity growing up in the public eye is never a typical experience, especially when your family life has been documented on reality television for years. That has been the case for Leah, the daughter of reality TV personality Amber Portwood, whose journey from childhood to adolescence has unfolded under constant public attention. Now stepping into a major milestone, her high school prom, Leah represents something more than just a teenager attending a school dance. Her story has become one of transition, resilience, and the quiet process of becoming her own person, despite years of external commentary and media attention. A childhood under observation from an early age, Leah's life was not entirely private. With cameras capturing moments of her family life, many of her early years were shared with audiences who followed her mother's reality TV journey. That kind of exposure can shape how the public sees a child long before the child is old enough to define themselves. As viewers watched, Leah was often seen in the background of larger family narratives, moments of parenting struggles, emotional conversations, and the complexities of growing up in a household frequently under public discussion. While most children experience childhood privately, Leah's experiences were partially shaped by storytelling that wasn't always under her control. Despite that, what stands out over time is not the drama that surrounded the family, but Leah's gradual emergence into her own identity. As she grew older, she became less of a background figure, and more of a young person stepping into independence. The challenge of growing up publicly. Adolescence is already a difficult phase for most people. It involves physical changes, emotional development, shifting friendships, and the process of figuring out who you are. For Leah, those universal challenges came with an added layer: public visibility. Being the child of a well-known reality TV figure meant that moments of family tension or change were sometimes discussed online or in media spaces. That level of attention can make normal teenage experiences feel amplified. Yet through those years, Leah's story has also been one of continuity. She has continued her education, built her own social world, and moved forward in ways that reflect stability and personal growth. While the public narrative around her family has often focused on challenges, her own trajectory has been steadily forward-moving. The shift into young adulthood: as Leah entered her teenage years, a noticeable shift began to appear. Instead of being defined solely in relation to her mother's public persona, she started to be seen more as an individual young woman with her own milestones, interests, and personality. This transition is something many children of public figures experience: the gradual separation between family story and personal identity. For Leah, that shift has become especially visible in recent years as she approaches adulthood milestones, like high school events, friendships, and future planning. Prom, in particular, represents one of those symbolic turning points. It is not just a school dance, it is a cultural marker of growing up, independence, and self-expression. Prom as a milestone of identity. Prom is often portrayed as a single night of celebration, but for many teenagers, it represents something larger: the feeling of stepping into a new stage of life. For Leah, attending prom is significant because it highlights how far she has come from childhood into young adulthood. It is a moment that symbolizes normal teenage experiences: planning outfits, spending time with friends, taking photos, and creating memories that feel important in the moment and nostalgic later. While the public may focus on photos or appearances, the deeper meaning of prom lies in the experience itself. It is one of the first major events where teenagers often make their own choices about how they want to present themselves and how they want to be remembered in that stage of life. A mother-daughter narrative in the background. Although Leah is now stepping into her own identity, the connection to her mother remains part of her broader story. Amber Portwood has often been discussed in media for her own life experiences and reality television presence, which inevitably shaped public awareness of Leah's upbringing. However, as time passes, the focus has gradually shifted. Instead of centering entirely on past challenges, attention increasingly turns toward Leah's individual growth and the path she is carving for herself. This transition from child of a public figure to an emerging adult with her own story is one of the most important aspects of her journey. The reality of growing up with public attention. One of the most overlooked aspects of Leah's experience is how normal it is in some ways. Despite the media attention surrounding her family, she has still gone through everyday milestones: attending school and making friends, navigating teenage identity and self-expression, experiencing school events like prom, moving through the stages of adolescence at her own pace. What makes her situation unique is not the experiences themselves, but the visibility of those experiences to a wider audience. Public attention often simplifies complex lives into short narratives. But real growth is not linear, and it is not always visible in photos or headlines. It happens quietly in conversations, personal decisions, friendships, and everyday routines. Transformation over time. Looking back at early images and moments from Leah's childhood, one thing becomes clear: she has grown up in real time, in front of an audience that has also changed alongside her story. Transformation in this sense is not just about appearance, but about maturity. The shift from childhood to adolescence is gradual, shaped by both internal development and external environment. As she reaches milestones like prom, what stands out most is not just how she looks in a formal setting, but how the moment represents years of growth, adjustment, and resilience. The meaning of thriving. The word thriving is often used loosely in public narratives, but in Leah's case, it reflects something simple: continuation and stability. Thriving does not have to mean perfection or a dramatic transformation. It can mean continuing education, building friendships, participating in normal teenage experiences, developing independence over time, navigating public attention, while still maintaining personal identity. From that perspective, Leah's prom moment becomes less about spectacle and more about continuity, a sign that life is moving forward. Prom photos and public reaction. Prom photos often circulate widely in the age of social media, especially when they involve individuals connected to public figures. In Leah's case, images shared around this milestone naturally drew attention. However, beyond online commentary, the real importance of those images lies in what they represent for her personally: a memory of youth, friendship, and transition. For many teenagers, prom photos become keepsakes that mark the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. Years later, they serve as reminders of who they were at that stage of life. Looking ahead, as Leah continues moving forward, her story will likely continue evolving away from early childhood narratives and toward her own independent identity. The transition from adolescence to adulthood brings new decisions, new experiences, and new definitions of self. Prom is just one milestone, but it fits into a larger arc: growing up in a unique environment, while still building a life that is recognizably her own. Final reflection: Leah's journey is not defined by a single event, nor by the public narratives that have surrounded her family over the years. Instead, it is defined by steady progression: childhood to adolescence, observation to individuality, and public story to personal identity. Her prom marks more than a school tradition. It represents time passing, growth taking shape, and a young person stepping further into her own future. And in that sense, the most important part of her story is not what has been said about her, but what she continues to become. Thanks for the watching and subscribe.